Great afternoon, everyone. We are just super excited for this afternoon session. And today's webinar is to give you a demonstration of one of our solutions dubbed as Asian Business Dimension. And this module focuses on add-on functionalities in the financial front that is uniquely Filipino. So this afternoon, we would show you how we Philippinized Acumatica. We came up with this module as a result of various insights we have in regard to the common requirement of Philippine companies. We address the usual challenges in managing taxation. So our Philippine tax management covers handling your VAT or value added tax, your expanded withholding taxes, EWT, and its twin, which is called CWT or creditable withholding tax, and some final taxes. Also part of the Asian Business Dimension is managing requests for petty cash fund, cash advance, and revolving fund, as well as its liquidation. We also develop a functionality for warehousing of post-dated checks, and the usual way of dealing with PDC in the Philippines is to monitor it via Excel. However, we put the monitoring entirely within Acumatica. So without preempting too much, I'll turn you over to the two pre-sales consultants to discuss the details of PhilTax, cash fund management, and post-dated check. Hi, Jervs, you may take over.
Okay, let me share my screen first. So now we will be presenting each of the core modules of Asian Business Dimensions, beginning with the first one, which is the Philippine Taxation module. So as the name suggests, this solution is designed to manage the company's compliance with the regulation of the Philippines Local Tax Management Body, which we call the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or the BIR. And this module aims to make the BIR reporting just simple and easy. So we have here enumerated and categorized the feature sets included in the Philippine Taxation module. So we have incorporated or make enhancements in the existing processes of Acumatica. We also have created automatically generated BIR forms. If you are our existing Acumatica client with Philippine Taxation, so beginning from version 6 to version 2019 R2, we only have BIR 2307 as printable form. But on the latest release of Asian Business Dimension of Philippine Taxation, in the version 2020 R2, we have already added and incorporated the other BIR forms. So BIR 2306 for certificate of payment or withholding tax for our final income taxes, 1601 EQ, 1601 FQ for our EWT and creditable withholding taxes for our quarterly returns, and 0619E, 0619F for our monthly returns of our withholding taxes, and for our VAT returns monthly, 2550M and 2550Q for our quarterly returns. We also have incorporated all the necessary books of accounts. So we have here the general journal, cash receipt journal, sales journal, purchase journal, and inventory list. The format of these books of accounts is already formatted based on the template of or the requirement of BIR. We also have the supporting schedules or reports we can generate out of Acumatica, so it can serve as a supporting document for every filing period. So let's dive into this categorizations in Philippine taxation one by one. So actually, as you can notice, majority of the functionalities, or almost 75% of the functionalities of PhilTax, is composed of BIR forms and reports. Because after all, that is the goal of the tax requirement. It is actually to furnish and submit BIR reports for every tax reporting period. So we have also created enhancements in the existing standard processes of Acumatica to comply with the specific BIR rules and regulations. So the first one is, I'll be just giving you the business value why we have created these processes in Philippine taxation. Because after all, Acumatica is a standard tax management. But in order for us to be compliant with the BIR, we have to make a little tweaking and little enhancements in the standard functionalities of Acumatica. And these are the following. So the first one, is we have created a way to recognize withholding tax upon invoice. By standard, Acumatica always recognize withholding taxes upon payment. But considering the BIR tax rules, actually the BIR says that the obligation to withhold arises upon either payment, accrual, or recording of expense, whichever comes earlier. And given that parameter, in order for us to recognize withholding tax in Acumatica upon invoice, what we actually do is a workaround. We need to add additional document line in the bills and adjustment document, and we have to put a negative amount in order for us to capture or to record the withholding tax payable entry in the general ledger transactions. But since this is a workaround, you have to do it manually. And since you have to do it manually, it's more prone to possible errors. And we don't want our clients to still be burdened in that possibility. That's why we created a specific solution to handle that. That's why we have created this enhancement in the existing tax management of Acumatica. By the way, this also comes with a built-in BIR 2307 printable document in Acumatica. So you can just generate it. If you would like to put in your signature in the BIR 2307, you can also do it. It's just configurable. Then the next one is the recording of creditable withholding tax. If the withholding tax upon invoice, we call it EWT or expanded withholding tax, or even final taxes for final income that we need to withhold. So the next one is the recording of this another type of withholding tax, which is the creditable withholding tax. This is actually a withholding tax on the payee's perspective. This is actually deemed as a prepaid or advanced withholding tax on the payee, or simply, in layman's term, we need to record a withholding tax on our collection. But Acumatica by standard do not have a standard functionality to automatically suggest withholding tax on collection. Actually, the withholding tax of Acumatica functions only on the payable side. That is why, in order for us to comply with this BIR standard or BIR regulation, we have created this way of recording the creditable withholding tax. So later on, I'll show you how we can do both that EWT in the AP and that CWT in the AR to recognize both these withholding taxes. And then the other one is we put also, this is an enhancement in the latest version of ABD, or Asian Business Dimensions for 2020 R2. We added a configuration requiring tax identification. So the premise of this functionality actually comes from majority of our existing clients' requests. Because, we are always rooting for the client's request. So because tax identification in Acumatica's customer and vendor profile is not mandatory, the user usually forgot to encode upon creation of the vendor or customer profile. So it is only upon filing period and generation of tax report wherein they might find out that they forgot to encode the tax identification number of the customer or vendor. So they'll have to look into the records again and updates one by one until they completed everything, and this becomes a reason of inefficiency sometimes, especially if you are haggling in between due dates, because in due dates in the Philippines, especially for tax filing, means a penalty, and we don't want that to happen. And the next one, this is not yet the last one, but actually this is somewhat related to cash fund management. So we also added a feature or functionality wherein we can still recognize the input VAT or withholding taxes arising from employee-related transactions. So the best sample for these scenarios is when, for example, we are allotting a cash fund or a cash advance to our employees. And these cash advances are intended to be used for business expenses. And since our payee is our employee, so when we record it to Acumatica, we also treat the employee as our vendor. But come liquidation of the expense, we do not have a way to claim the input VAT arising from the transactions because our vendor is the employee, not the proper vendor from which the expense was really availed of. So this supposed claimed input VAT or withholding taxes are supposed tax savings on the company's part, and we do not have a facility to do that in the system, so that if you do not have fill tax, or you do not have a way to, you do not make a customization to do that, what you would have to do is just to sacrifice that supposed savings of your for our Acumatica clients. That is why we added it in the feature sets also of Philippine Taxation. And the last but definitely not the least process enhancement that we have created, this is actually the most liked functionality in the roster. So this is a readily available DAT file generator for our alpha lease and VAT relief. So if you will do a tax mapping manually, so you have, for example, 1,000 purchase transactions and 2,000 sales transactions every month. What you would have to do is, if you do not have this DAT file generator, basically what the client would do is to generate a report in Acumatica or in any ERP, and then after that you'll have to format all those transactions with VAT or withholding taxes in the format of VIR, and after that you'll have to put it or encode it one by one in the relief data entry or the EFTS or the electronic filing and payment system of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. So imagine the time that you will need in completing all those things, plus the time pressure of the deadlines, because again, deadlines in the Philippines is equivalent to penalties, and that also we don't want to happen to our Acumatica clients. That's why we all created this specific processes to adhere on the existing BIR tax rules and regulations. So now, let's drop into Acumatica and see how we can process all these enhancements and features within Philippine Taxation. Okay, so the first one is the ability, we have the additional functionality wherein we can still recognize withholding tax upon invoice. So let's say, for example, let me refresh my screen. Okay, like that. Okay, so the first one is the ability wherein we can withhold EWT upon invoice, because that is not standard of Acumatica as of the moment. So let me create bills and adjustments. Okay, let me add one. So if I select the vendor, as it will automatically populate the default values, including the default withholding tax recognition. So we have to key in, of course, our sales invoice coming from our vendor. Let's say 6, 7. And on the document line, let's say I am adding an item which the company purchased. So let's say, for example, the nCoV vaccine is finally released and the company will now be availing of this nCoV vaccine. So the company has ordered 1 box and it's amounting to $100,000. Now I'm saving this one. So as you can see, automatically Acumatica would suggest the applicable tax rates, the VAT applicable for the transaction, and the withholding tax. This automatic suggestions of tax rates is still compliant with the existing Acumatica combination of tax zone and tax category, the what is to tax and who is to tax profile in the taxes of Acumatica. So when I save this one and hit release, or I post this one, so automatically Acumatica will recognize an accounting entry specifically to recognize this withholding tax. So this localization also comes with a localized AP voucher, because in the Philippines, this is actually a prevailing practice to generate an accounts payable voucher from time to time. So this is the standard look and feel of the standard accounts payable voucher. So we have here the recorded entry. Of course, we record the expense account, and then we recognize the input VAT. We also recognize the withholding tax, and the accounts payable is now net of withholding tax. As you can see, I did not add any document line from here and put a negative sign, because it's really an additional and manual intervention to do that. So everything is now configured. Acumatica will even suggest what timing of recognition do we apply for this vendor. Is it upon invoice or upon payment? And we can also automatically print BIR 2307 from here for our creditable withholding taxes or EWT, and for BIR 2306 for our final income taxes. So let us generate this BIR 2307 from here and then click this PDF view. So this is actually the updated BIR 2307 form based on the prevailing train law of BIR. So you can also automatically display the signatory, the authorized signatory for the BIR 2307, as well as his or her signatory. So this is also to speed up or optimize the processing and provision of BIR 2307 for issuing to our respective vendors or suppliers. So that is the recognition of EWT. And if you pay this one and this invoice, it will be net of withholding tax already. And also all the existing accounts payable reports are also net of withholding taxes. So it caters all the requirements in there. So the automatic signature in the BIR 2307 is just a configuration from the branches of Acumatica. So you just have to upload here the signature, and automatically what is reflected from here will be automatically displayed in the BIR 2307. So the next one is the recognition of creditable withholding taxes. So let me close this screen. Okay. So I have here a pre-created or posted invoice. So now we have to record the collection of this one. So since this this collection is subject to a withholding tax, a creditable withholding tax, instead of receiving the 112 receivable, I am just collecting a portion which is net of creditable withholding tax already. So from here, I just have to select the invoice that I have to collect. So let's say this one. Okay. And then I'm saving this first. As you can see, that is already net of withholding tax. And from here, I just have to load the documents. And I just have to select what applicable ATC code is applicable in this transaction. So let's say, for example, this is, I'll be using WC158. The withholding tax base and the withholding amount is automatically computed already by Acumatica. And then when I release this one, it would automatically post the payment, and it would automatically create a credit memo reference number. So this credit memo represents our creditable withholding tax entry. So if I click into this one, are you seeing the pop-up page?
Yes, Jervis.
Okay, so let me check the entry. So once it was released, you have the generated accounting entry. So it would definitely debit for a debit amount of creditable withholding tax or prepaid tax, and a credit to our accounts receivable. So once we receive the BIR 2307 from our customer, we'll have to apply this to the existing invoice. So that is to close the subsidiary, that is to close not only the GL level, but also the subsidiary level of the customer. So that's CWT. And the next one is the a setup or configuration requiring the tax identification number. So this is existing both for the vendor profile and customer profile. So as you can see, it was actually tagged into the customer class. We do not make it as a global setup because there are still customers who are not VAT registered or non-VAT, and those that is exempt. So there are employees that are our customers also, and that we do not require at any thing. So let me again refresh my screen. So basically, this setup is existing in the customer class and vendor class of Acumatica. So we have created here a checkbox. This one, require tax identification number. So if this is selected, let's say we select this one, and we refresh this page. Okay. And we refresh this page. So it will now require us to put a tax registration ID in the customer profile. Same with the vendor profile. So this is a control in order for us to have the completeness of information, of tax related information, even before filing. So that's the premise of this, or the context of this requirement. And the next one is the recognition, is a way to recognize or to still claim the input VAT or withholding taxes even in the employee-related transactions. So for example, we have here a liquidation entry of our employee, Michael Andrews. So he has availed of an accommodation, and which accommodation receipt is subject to VAT. So in order for us to capture this in the VAT relief, because we cannot claim that if the vendor is the employee. So we have created here additional fields in the document details of bills and adjustments. So once we have encoded here the vendor name, the TIN, and the address of the vendor, we can still capture or we can still claim the input VAT in the reporting, both for VAT and withholding taxes. So when you release this one, and for example, we generate a report from here, let me... So as you can see, this the transactions for this transactions are employee-related transactions, which was availed to this restaurant, which is not maintained in Acumatica, but we can still able to claim the input VAT or even withholding taxes arising from the transactions. So that's the recognition. We'll be dwelling a lot of that features and functionalities when it comes to the cash fund management. So the last but definitely not the least functionality, as I mentioned earlier, is the that file generator. So this is actually we already included all the requirements of VIR, wherein we can automatically generate a DAT file, and then later on this DAT file can readily be uploaded to either the VAT relief data entry or to the EFTS. This is already validated, so we just have to generate the DAT file and upload in that corresponding or the respective sites, VIR sites. So let's say, for example, I am preparing a VAT relief for monthly VAT relief. So I just have to key in here the financial period and the month, and automatically Acumatica will read all the transactions in my database. What are the transactions with VAT? So I can generate a report for this 0619E actually filing. So we have already, this is actually formatted based on the BI format. And if you are planning to apply for a computerized accounting system, all the reports and forms in the Philippine Taxations are also cast ready. So you just have to apply for the accreditation, and will assist you also during the application. And that goes the same way. That's the same way for CWT, EWT, final taxes, VAT on importations, and SLR. I think it's not already mandated now under the framework, but still we have it here in Acumatica. And then actually there is another process enhancement that we have incorporated in the field tax, which we call the existing rule wherein we have to amortize the capital, the input VAT for our capital goods exceeding 1 million. But I think the recent train law has released a change into this existing ruling, wherein we are no longer required to amortize these purchases of this much beginning January 1, 2022. But for the clients who would still, of course, would have to use field tax for the next year, for the entire next year, they'll have to still comply with this requirement. But anyway, we also have that in the existing Philippine taxation module. So basically, that's the end-to-end processes enhancements in the existing field tax. And for the entire or the full suite or menu of the field tax, this is how it looks like in Acumatica. So we have the process enhancements here, all the schedules that you would like to generate, all the generic inquiries and books of accounts, including all the reports. So let's say, for example, I have to generate the 0619. This is a new BIR form in Acumatica. So you can just easily generate it from this page. And that goes the same way for all other BIR forms. And supporting that file, that reports, you can also generate it from this module. So that's that's the high level of product demo for the Philippine Taxation module.
There's one question, if you maybe want to answer this first, because it's VAT related. And
Okay.
so the question is if this module supports the VAT final tax for construction companies too.
Yes, that is actually supported. I think I have incorporated in the slide the WBT or the withholding VAT. So we have just incorporated a checkbox in the taxes indicating that this withholding tax is, let me just check some existing information from here. But we have here a checkbox indicating that this tax is applicable for final withholding VAT, or this is something that we use when we have transactions to the GOCCs or government-owned corporations, because we have a different treatment in terms of VAT for those kind of transactions. So to answer the question, yes, we have it incorporated in the Philippine Taxation module.